Well, hello and welcome to my first vlog of 2021. A new year, weren't we all so excited about saying goodbye to 2020? And sadly, as I sit here now, it's not looking like quite the fresh start that it was supposed to be. This lockdown certainly feels a little different to lockdown 2 that was called in November, predominantly, I think, because the schools have been closed. But we're still noticing an awful lot of cars on the road, people out and about, and indeed for the housing market, they were very quick to come out and say that we were to remain open. With the previous lockdowns, we've kind of sat and waited a bit, but it came out almost within an hour of the detailed advice regarding the housing market. So to summarise and just to first of all let you know, we are still all open for business. It doesn't feel quite the same in the office. I've got more of my staff working from home. We are maintaining a skeleton staff here in the office because we do a lot of key handovers. We have trades coming in to look after our lettings book. We have people dropping back paperwork. So we still need to have a presence here. And of course, we are still absolutely allowed to conduct valuations, viewings, and all other aspects to do with taking the property to market and keeping the housing market rolling. So it feels pretty much like that in November to me, other than the fact that, like many of you, I'm grappling with the joys of homeschooling. My heart goes out to you, and we do hope the schools return very soon. We're used to working with safe practices now, so to us it feels just quite normal. But I did promise you my thoughts on 2021 and the housing market. And so I want to move on to those now and give you a very whistle-stop tour of what I feel it will look like for 2021. And interestingly, I don't think the current lockdown is going to make much of a difference to my forecast. The reality is that big overriding Brexit situation continues to drive the UK government with their response to the COVID pandemic. And they simply do not want the UK to look like a failure against the rest of Europe. So that's why they are keeping that stimulus there to support people with the furlough scheme extended till April. Extra stimulus now for companies that can't open at the moment. They announced a grant, and keeping the housing market open. That was absolutely fundamental to keeping the economy rolling. There are billions of pounds worth of transactions at the moment currently caught up in the housing market, which are trying to meet that stamp duty deadline, which the holiday ends at the end of March, so not long to go now. And if they'd have closed the housing market, it would have sent a heart attack across the system, and we would have seen many, many deals collapsing as people became nervous, or simply solicitors not being prepared to transact on deals. So the housing market is open to keep the economy generally stimulated. But overall, I think generally this year we'll see a continuing rise in property prices. Last year, the year ended up 6.6%. And I think this year it'll probably be closer to 4 or 5%. 6.6% is unsustainable, and of course did catch up a bit of the lag of what had happened with those Brexit years. But overall prices will continue to rise, and I think the biggest reason for that remains the fact that despite there being uncertainty around the economy, most people's house moving plans will override that. And with most of the population still actually enjoying good levels of income and actually feeling wealthier, if anything, simply because they are unable to spend much of their money at the moment. And many, especially in this area, have effectively had a pay rise in not having to pay for their train ticket up to London. And with interest rates so low, we think that transactions and prices will continue to do well this year. The stamp duty holiday ending, it's what I hear about all the time. Is the world going to fall off a cliff once that ends? No, I don't think so. The reality is the price increase that's been seen has kind of mitigated any stamp duty saving that many might have wanted to get. And I think for many now what will simply happen is buyers may make slightly lower offers, or sellers will price in that stamp duty discount if it's at a bracket that really affects it. Of course, where we sit here in Tunbridge Wells, many of our transactions are above a rate well above that maximum £500,000 saving on a property price it's purchased. So it just remains to be seen whether they'll slightly extend that deadline. I don't think Rishi will extend it generally, but whether he extends it to allow those transactions that are chugging through the system and simply can't quite get there because of delays with conveyancing surveyors and lenders, we will wait and see. But I mean, if you looked at the autumn statement, you probably would have looked at it and seen it very, very negatively. I think Rishi could have presented it quite differently. The reality is the COVID pandemic is like nothing else we have ever faced. And we get very, very hung up on the amount of money that has been created to sustain the economy with all the furlough scheme, etc., and the payment of the debt and how will that debt get repaid. The reality is that most of us live beyond our means. We all have debt that we can't actually afford to repay right here, right now. It's called a mortgage. But we're okay with that because we can make the interest payments, and that's all that really matters surrounding government debt. The Bank of England was created to provide money to the government, and they've effectively just borrowed a load of money from the Bank of England to create that stimulus, the equivalent of 7 UK economies, new economies entering the global market. So the debt isn't an issue. The repayment of it will happen when I think Rishi feels that we can afford to do so. And who knows what will happen on CGT of property. That's one of the biggest questions I've got at the moment. I'll be interested to hear what he says in his spring statement. But we have to remember it took us 100 years to repay the debt of the world wars. And did that worry us? Not really, because we could afford those payments. So I wouldn't get too hung up on that. I think there'll be a global economic boom in the summer of 2021 as the vaccine is fully rolled out, we return to normal and we get back to spending. The holiday sector is going to see nothing like it at the end of this year as we all book that. And our hearts still go out to anybody in the hospitality or travel industry who are definitely the hardest hit at the moment, who are absolutely feeling that pain. But it will return, and for those who can survive and weather this storm, I think they'll find they'll have a cracking end to their year. So I'm positive as ever. I hope that you feel so too after this vlog. I look forward to seeing you next week. I'll do more of my usual roundup, and until then, please stay safe.